My original music piece was made in the alternative genre, which doesn't have many key points that you can take from in convention terms. So what I found is that within the alternative genre, they will take conventions from other different genres and then they will adapt them and change them slightly and put them within their own piece so that they are actually creating a more individual piece of work, a more individual song, and in this case, definitely a more individual kind of music video. So from this alternative genre, I decided to follow those kinds of conventions and create a very different piece that doesn't stick entirely to conventions but certainly uses them to create a new kind of media text. So the other genre that I took a lot from was the horror genre. So my concept definitely took a lot from horror in the plot line. It's about murder and gore and kind of psycho, you know, that kind of idea. So I chose horror to explore and to take certain aspects from that I could develop into my own piece whilst keeping within that alternative genre, which creates an individual piece and often has a very high production value. So I chose certain conventions and tropes like gore. Gore is used in so many horror films. In fact, it's almost become synonymous with the horror genre. A lot of people think of blood and gore and guts and things like that when they are talking about horror. It's not actually exactly the same, but it certainly is a really key and significant symbol of the horror genre. So instead of including lots of gore and very morbid tones in my piece, I decided to take certain aspects of that and change them a little bit. So I took the idea of blood and that symbol and I moved it into a more aesthetic type of symbol that would be able to help the audience understand the narrative, because I excluded the actual murder scene. So I didn't want to portray too much like goriness. That's not what I was going for. I was more going for the tone and the themes of horror without actually showing the same creative techniques. So using blood as a symbol for that kind of action and using the blood as a symbol of the murder taking place, it became more of a part of the aesthetic of the song. It became a branding technique as well, but it was all taken from the horror genre and just changed a little bit. Another convention that I used was the idea of psycho, you know, psycho killers, that kind of thing. And I also found that with the psycho killers, I found that it was often a male villain, and they usually had some kind of psychotic obsession with gore and murder and that kind of thing. It was mindless murder. So I tried to change that because it's not always a man, it's not always an obsession with murder and gore. That's not how these things play out. So I intentionally made my character a female, and I also made the reasons for in which she took these actions quite unclear. It was more about an emotional trigger, something that she was unsure about, her insanity and her unable to reason with morality. That transgression of the moral line was more to do with her mental state and not something she was conscious of doing. That subverts the idea of the psycho killer somewhat, but it certainly includes that person, that character trait, that murder within the video. I also took from this genre the Kubrick stare, which is a common trope throughout any kind of horror film, especially with the psycho killer idea. So what happens is the villain, the psycho, will stare the camera down and will take up almost all of the screen. And I enjoyed that idea because it really brings you in close with that character and it really influences the audience. I decided to put that into mine, but instead of having a look of malice on my character's face, I had it more of a blank face to show her unreason, the fact that she didn't really know what she was doing. That again slightly subverts that convention, but it's still using it to create a new idea, a new media text. I did stick to the alternative genre in this respect though. That convention of taking from other genres and redistributing in different ways, that is certainly something that is common throughout the alternative genre. Also, I tried to keep it as high production value as I could, so I used a lot of technologies, high quality things that would be able to make a really nicely finished and nice pleasant aesthetic. The representation of different social groups and issues is shown throughout the actual content of my video. So although there aren't lyrics, which I'll go into later, it is talking about the transgression of the moral line, that her moral compass is slightly different to other people. She's not certain of what she's doing. She's not malicious because she, with her insanity, doesn't know that this murder is a bad thing to do. And therefore, is that morally incorrect if she doesn't know? Now, this sort of difference in moral compass is something that everybody has, on a lesser scale than murder certainly, but it's something that the audience can relate to and think about, and that's how it engages the audience and starts to represent the idea of, oh, how can that happen in my life? You know, how is that something that I can relate to? It's certainly something that the audience will be able to take and see in themselves. With the issues, it's another big issue in the crime sector of people committing crimes and not being aware that they are crimes. People, you know, with learning difficulties or who are clinically insane, things like that. Is it correct to lock them up and throw away the key, or should we be able to try and rehabilitate them or work around this this problem, which is that the fact that they don't know they're doing wrong. I feel as though I branded my product quite well. I created a logo for it and I used very similar colour palettes throughout all of the products. My video was made in mostly black and white with the occasional colour scene which would engage the colour red. Red being symbolic of danger and blood and death, which is of course one of the main themes throughout my video. So I decided that I'd use this to my advantage and I'd make my digipack and my website within the same colour palette. So I used greys, whites, blacks and red to create my website and my digipack, which makes all of the products, you know, fit nicely together. They're under one umbrella and you can see that just from the colours that are being used. Along with that, I have used the same kind of props and products. So in my video there was the imagery with roses and there was the imagery with blood. And in my digipack and in my website I incorporated those too. So there are images of blood, there are images of roses on both. There's blood splats behind the CD and on the CD in my digipack, roses in the front cover, and the website has images and screenshots from throughout the video to represent the video on the website. So the reason I had the branding in the first place was because I was trying to market a single part of my production. Now, instead of trying to sell a song, which is what most videos are made for, like music videos are usually there to promote the song or the artist in some way, I decided that my song and my video would be promoting the whole album. Now, my song doesn't have any lyrics in, which can seem quite odd at first, but it's my understanding now that a huge platform for the distribution of music is video streaming on things like YouTube, social media, like Facebook and Twitter and things like that. People are really consuming more music on a video format, and video streaming is part of the charts now and is, you know, a very high source of revenue for artists. I feel like that's not really being taken advantage of by artists these days who are sticking to traditional values, and that's okay. Of course, vinyls are coming back in, things like that. Going back into tradition is fine, but looking forward in the digital age, it seems to me that it's quite important that we embrace the fact that people are starting to see things online. The way they see them online is usually as a video. People don't often go out of their way to listen to music without the video there. There are things like Spotify, and obviously you could still buy music on iTunes and things like that, but it's becoming a really booming success with YouTube, that people will look up music and listen to music on YouTube and watch videos with it. This is because it's a lot cheaper for the audience than it would be to actually buy the music, so it's a very popular platform. But I think making visuals with the music is becoming key. Making a whole album along with a film is now starting to come commonplace after Beyoncé's Lemonade was released. It's very interesting to see that music is no longer being just music and the lyrics as the story, but it's becoming a whole media text involving visuals and involving sounds and feelings and themes. You don't need the lyrics to influence that theme. I'm able to access this platform because I'm making something that has a stronger storyline in the video than in the music. It doesn't have any lyrics. So this makes it into more of a visual thing, something you'll come across online on YouTube. And the music in the background, of course, is a part of the album. It's a song from the album. The reason I've made the song without the lyrics is because having such a strong video with a strong message is that people will watch it and they'll be more intrigued by the artist. They'll think, who has made this? And why is there not just a song? And they're going to be more intrigued into finding out what's on the album. And they'll listen to the album. They'll go and seek out the artist. It's more of a promotional video for the whole artist as a whole, trying to get out there, trying to get known, rather than something to be released that people will enjoy and download and buy. It's more an advertising way of bringing in more fans. The technologies I had to use making this product were quite complicated to me, and much like last year where I hadn't used Photoshop at all, this year I hadn't used Premiere before. So I had to learn and reteach myself skills from Photoshop, and I had to definitely develop my skills in Premiere and be able to actually edit footage, which I'd never done before. I'd never even made any audio-visual products before at all. So it was a whole new learning experience to me. It was really interesting, and now I'm quite capable on Premiere, and I sort of know what I'm doing, and I'm able to edit, and I'm able to film, and that's a really good skill to have learned throughout this course. So obviously I used Premiere to actually edit and create my piece, my video. Which I used a lot of tools on, and I used overlays, and I changed a lot of the colours with curves and things like that. And the editing process was quite long, but it really taught me how to sync things through with the sound and the video. So my cuts are often on strong beats, and I'll have certain cuts that show an image that's really important on a stronger part of the song at the beginning of a bar or something like that. To make my digipack, I used Photoshop, which I'd slightly forgotten about since last year, so I had to reteach myself a little bit, but I got back into the flow of it and I created my new piece. I think the key part about that digipack is the branding and the logo that I'd made, which I had then put onto the video and onto my website to keep all of the pieces together along with that colour palette. It was an interesting thing to create, and it really shows that it's an album, you know, it has all the songs on it, and it doesn't have the lyrics to the song because there are no lyrics. It's a song in the middle of the album, it's not a key song, and that's because it joins two songs together. It's there as an instrumental, as a break, and hopefully that will show that my song isn't meant to be a single. It's not meant to be something that people will download when they see it. It's something that will draw people into the whole album. When it came to actually making the song, I had to use Logic Pro, which is quite interesting to use, but it was tricky at start. It was really interesting using other kinds of analog music techniques and instruments and how to edit those to make different sounds. And synthesizers are fantastic to use. So I used lots of different kinds of technologies in putting that piece together, even though I used many actual acoustic instruments and analog instruments. The editing of it together was very much a technological process. To make my website, I used Wix, which is a really helpful website when it comes to creating your own. You can make some really beautiful things, which is really integral in my piece, because one of the conventions of the alternative genre being a high production value, you know, very aesthetic. And so using Wix to make my website was really handy because it allowed me to follow through with that convention. The blog system in which we uploaded all of our content to our blogs was quite interesting to me. It was tricky in some respects because I don't do things so much in chronological order, but it was very helpful in other respects that I could easily go back and edit things and change things that were wrong or that I could add to. And it was really nice being able to just upload things onto the internet, and that's where it is, that's where it stays, and it's safe there, and I will not lose it, and I won't delete it or anything, which is really good. Another key part of my piece was my research. I did a lot of research on the internet. It was integral to everything that I did. You know, I used YouTube a lot to look up videos, and especially videos to teach me how to use Premiere, and other music videos that I could take ideas from. The internet was also great for finding websites that would help me find statistics and things like that, and it was basically just absolutely core to my production.